Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
Hey everybody, I'm John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our spiritual pals out there? In today's episode, we'll be talking about runes and the Romanian-American mystic. What exactly are runes? How do they work? What exactly is a mystic? Join us and our special guest, Diana Robertson of Runes and Ravens, to find out more.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.
Sponsor stuff, la 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 la.
Do-do-do. All right, bring us back, John.
Welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, we have special guest Diana Robertson with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Very excited to have you on. I try to engage in and chime in on all of your posts in social media. And I know John's going to ask, how do I know about Diana?
Yes, because I was trying to find stuff and I was not successful.
So, and I guess for me, I have the benefit of knowing her full name. So I just Google and everything pops up that you need to know. I probably should have sent you that.
Yeah, probably.
So Diana, I came across Diana on TikTok.
Of course.
It's a good place.
I've been on the TikTok rabbit hole of metaphysical content. And so I definitely tune in, and I don't know, I had to, I joke with John that when I first signed up for it, I had to train the algorithm what not to show me. And I'm just no, I don't want to see any of that. If it has to do with choreographed dances to viral songs, that's not for me. So I trained it very quickly to show me content. Once I did, you popped up on my For Your profile feed.
Oh, awesome. Do you remember what necessarily was going on?
Yeah, actually, yes. You were doing a runes reading, and you were doing your runes readings, or pulls. And I was like, what is this? What's going on here? And I tend to be a very audio sensitive person. So the sound of the runes, I really like it. So
yeah, everybody says it sounds like rain. I don't know how it'll sound here, but this is...
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like rain.
Yes. Love it.
I love it too. So when I paused and I heard the sound of the runes, and then you have the most amazing voice, speaking voice, I was like,
oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I paused.
I grew it myself.
You grew it very well. So I definitely stopped, and I think I stayed on there for an hour just listening because I didn't know what it was. I'm I hear these really neat things. I see you pulling runes, and I'm like, what is this? Because you hold it up to the screen to show people what you pulled.
Yeah, let me show you a positive one. I was about to pull the worst one. There's a positive. Here's a good one. But yeah, these are the runes. This one's about abundance, material wealth. This is about wisdom, knowledge, education. This is, it's just, they're all just different symbols, and you can read them either upright. Well, this one doesn't have a reverse. Let me do this one. You can read them upright or in opposition or in reverse. And they have so many different meanings to them. So you kind of also have to read them intuitively, and kind of, I guess, just pick up the feel of the person that you're pulling for to really kind of pull the right meaning out of the many. I'm trying to think. I guess like this one's a good example. This one looks like the Jesus fish represents your family, your support system, your home life, and this also has to do with communication in some instances, but not always about communication. Typically, it's about your family or the people who are in your corner, your support system. But there are situations where I'll pick it and I'll be about to talk about family, and I'll be like, nope. Nope, this one's communication within the family. This is about this type of situation. So you just kind of have to understand the scope of each rune so that you can kind of gather the information properly.
Now, so when you pulled it, really just shifting it, like rotating the rune, it changed it from, the opposition and did you say reverse?
Yeah.
How do you know which direction then?
Well, when I'm pulling them like online, so, when I'm shuffling like this and I'm pulling on, like, I don't look at them until I finally pull it up and then I turn and I look at it. So that's, again, one that doesn't have a reverse. So if I pick it up this way, that's reverse. If I pick it up this way, when I turn it and I look at it, that's the way that it is. That's the direction that I read it as.
Okay.
But there's quite a few of them that don't have a reverse or opposition.
How long have you been reading runes?
I'm going on 4 years now. I've been doing divination with oracle cards, specifically since I was about 13, 14 in secret. I had my dresser. Hi, Mom, if you're ever going to hear this. I had my dresser. I'd pull out the bottom drawer, like completely remove it from the dresser. And that's where I had my stash of books and cards and all of my stuff on ancient Egypt and Celtic magic. And I never did drugs. I never smoked. I never did the other stuff. My rebellion was mysticism, and witchcraft and divination.
It's so funny because I actually hid my stuff the same way. All my witchcraft books, this exact same way. So when you said that, I was just like, yes.
See, but now, like the last, I don't know how many dressers I've had in my adult life, and none of them have removable dressers anymore. And I'm like, how are my kids going to get away with stuff anymore?
Exactly.
Like, or think they are.
But, so you said that was it 14 when you were doing that?
Yeah, that's when I first started learning oracle cards. And so I have my vast array of cards, mainly oracle. I do tarot as well, but not as much. I read intuitively, mainly. So tarot has a little more, I guess, I don't know. I feel like tarot has more like distinct, like specific messages per card, where with oracle, I kind of do the same thing that I do with the runes. I get a feeling of just like kind of what exactly I'm really supposed to be giving this message for, whether it's, like business or if it's something personal or if it's something emotional versus spiritual or something like that. And I just feel like I've always been a little more in tune with oracle decks instead of tarot. But that might just be more of like a self sort of inflicted perspective, really. I think it's because every time I've ever seen somebody read tarot, it's all very memorized. Like, it was never, I see it more, I guess, authentic now, kind of being in the realm of metaphysics and all that. But back when I was younger, everything seemed just repetitive and like they were just memorizing something. And that just didn't flow well with me. So my mind works in symbols ever since I was a kid. If I see a symbol, I can immediately attach the information to the necessary, understanding of what that symbol is or what it stands for, versus memorizing things. I can't memorize things worth crap.
So it sounds like runes were right up your alley with the symbols.
Oh yeah. And I've dealt with symbols my whole life. I have super symbolic dreams since I was 7 years old was when they started, and I was able to interpret my own dreams since 7 years old. And a lot of it is just symbols throughout a lot of my dreams. And it's just how my mind has always worked. So when I started, I was seeing runes in my, I was having visions while I was meditating, while, I was just, out and about doing my own thing. I would see these symbols and things. And I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, why do I keep seeing these weird shapes? And then it was like Norse stuff just started crossing my path a lot. And I didn't really know much about Norse paganism or anything at the time. And so it was all just kind of novel to me. And when I made the connection that Norse paganism and runes come hand in hand, I was like, wait a second, like, is the universe trying to tell me something? I was like, let me go look. And I told my husband, I was like, I think I need to go get runes. It was actually after a dream I had. I woke up and I was like, I think I need to go get runes. And he's like, all right, let's go. And so we went around looking at metaphysical shops that were local. And I was looking at all these little baggies that are full of runes, and I was like, no, the ones that I need, I'm like, they're all the same size and the same shape. And I'm like, and I think they're blue. And he's like, well, where did you see them? And I'm like, I haven't. I'm like, I've never seen them. I don't know. I just feel like that's what they're supposed to be. And as I was saying that, I stuck my hand in this big like wicker basket that was like 3 feet tall that was just full of little velvet pouches of runes. And I reached to the bottom and I grabbed a random one. And then these are the ones that were there. And I was like, this is them. It's like, they're blue. I told you. And they're all the same size, same shapes. Because all the other ones that were at all the shops were all like different, just like they were like round stones, and they were but they were like shaped differently. So it was almost like, I'm like, I don't want to stick my hands in a bag and subconsciously pick the bigger one or the lopsided one and know what I'm pulling. I need them all to be like uniform. So that's how I got them.
That is so cool. Like, the fact that you leaned into finding, symbolism in your life since you were about 7, it sounds like that, it like primed you to find your runes. And watching you work with runes like on your lives, it really is, you'd go to a different place. I think you even mentioned it before, where someone's like, some people say I look possessed because my eyes, roam a little. And I'm like,
yeah, that was.
I've never seen that. I've never seen you look possessed, but I'm just like, that's funny.
I've gotten a little better control over how I look when I pull runes. Because when I first started doing the lives, I was at we were at our old house. It was before we moved into this house, and I would pull them, but it was like my eyes, and I recognized it was happening, but nobody called me out on it, so I didn't say anything until this one friend, she's the one who came in the other day and was like, yeah, you look possessed when you do it. I'm like, yeah, I know. You're the same one who told me before. But, because, I'll like shuffle them, and I'll look up, and I kind of just hold my eyes now, but before, like, my eyes would do this like back and forth sort of thing, like as I was picking them, and I was like, nobody's gonna notice, it's fine. Like, but I'm just doing what I do. It's the same thing when I'm talking to somebody, and if I'm giving somebody a reading, I'm not looking at them in the face. I'm usually looking over their shoulder. My eyes are bouncing back and forth because it's just what happens when I'm like gathering information. But apparently it looks like there's a demon.
There's a demon. Demons have shifty eyes. That's too funny.
It's fine.
That's so funny. Now, on your website, you have a lot of things that you offer, a lot of services, and you've got the runes. And so my question, because that's impressive. The list of what I'm sure you're even capable of more than that, but the list of what you offer is pretty darn impressive. So how did you develop those different abilities and skills? Because to me, those feel very different, like offering a twin flame reading versus runes versus cards. Like, those all feel very different.
They all come from the same place, ultimately, when you're making any sort of connection to, I just call it the universe. I can't imagine, what else, it's just sort of, I guess as I envision it, it's like like this ball of energy in the midst of everything, and anything that has life has some sort of connection to this ball of energy, that this is, where our soul or where our essence comes from. And I feel like it's that I kind of tap into, or that I connect to. And I learned to make that connection when I was 14. I remember sitting there in my room being like, I wonder if I'm going to be a psychic when I grow up. And I was raised in a cult, so I was not, it was extremely religious, and there was no allowance for any of this stuff. And so I was very secretive about what I was doing as I was learning. I was trying to learn to understand what was happening to me. And when I did ask the church for help, that did not look pretty or go well at all. And so I pulled back into myself, and I was like, I'll figure this out myself. And when I was 14, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, with this community that I'm in, I'm like, it doesn't make sense unless I get out of this at some point. And even then I was like, okay, if that happens, whatever. Like, see where life takes me, and, went from there. But I had always had this feeling of something that was there with me. I had always called it God when I was a Christian. I had assumed I was talking to God. I would ask questions, and I would almost sort of have a download of an answer, or suddenly have an understanding of something. And anytime I would talk, like sometimes I just do it in my head. I remember sitting in the car leaving church as a kid, and I would always choose the door on the left side of the car because that's where the moon was always at the end of church. And I would sit there and I would just look up at the moon and I would just ask questions. And there was this one part of my mind where it was like this part of my brain. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's this one part in my brain that it's like, it felt almost like a light would turn on. Like there was some kind of like a connection. This is the way actually, okay, so here's an example. So when you are facing somebody and, say you're looking you're looking right beside them. So, a person might be, oh, I don't know if they're making eye contact with me. Then they make that one little quick shift. And then suddenly it's like, there's the eye contact. It's like, oh, okay, now they're making eye contact. That moment of making eye contact, that's what it feels like. And that's how it always, when I was a kid, I was like, I felt like I was making eye contact with something up there. And I was like, oh, it's God. Like, all I knew being raised in a cult was God, the devil, and demons. Like, that was like all the existence of spirituality. And so I would just always assume it was God. And over the years, I would kind of start narrowing that feeling to the crown and to this one part of my brain, really. I could feel different parts of my brain when people are like, when I'm asked to do something or to think about something, whether it's emotional or analytical or something, I can point to the part of my brain that's working as I'm thinking about it. So I was like super hyper aware of my brain all the time. And I was like, oh, when I'm like connecting, I could feel this thing here. And I would start I didn't know I was meditating. I didn't know anything about meditating as a kid, but I spent a lot of time meditating and focusing on that feeling and recreating that feeling of connection. I was a very lonely kid. And so that was my only real feel of feeling connected to something and, that mattered or made me feel like I mattered. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. I learned, I was scrying. I was mirror scrying and fire scrying. I didn't know I was doing it. Until many years later, I would just, set up a little candle and I would just lay there and I would stare at it, but then I'd have visions and I would just know things. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, and again, I was like, a Christian. So I was like, oh, awesome. Like God gave me something. He told me something. And, all of that, the perspective, as I got older kind of changed leaving Christianity. So I recognized that it was only God because I was raised to only know God. There was no other understanding of something. But that's a whole other conversation. If we go that way, we go that way. But that's kind of how, that's how it all started, was just recognizing where that feeling, where that sense of connection was, and hyper focusing on that. And when I did not get any help from the church and these things kept happening and I kept knowing things that were going to happen and calling them out and seeing them happen, then I was like, I have to find answers. Like, this doesn't make sense with what the church is saying, with what I'm being consistently preached to and, directed to do and let go of. It just doesn't make sense. So then I started studying cultures and I taught myself Egyptian hieroglyphs in 7th grade. And I taught myself all sorts of, different, I understood the concept of, languages very young, also because I was, bilingual. But I would, just kind of delve into different cultures and different backgrounds, different countries and histories. And I feel like because I was so open to the rest of the world, that just kind of enhanced this ability to connect with people even more. It's a very long-winded answer.
No, I loved it. I have so many follow-ups now.
Awesome.
First of all, I love that you went from your understanding of God to calling it the universe, because I grew up with like a hyper religious background too, where like even just feeling presences, not even like seeing or conversing, just feeling it made me like, oh my God, you're possessed. The devil's trying to connect to you. And it's like, I don't know about that, but as I've become an adult and I've embraced and been less like, I'm gonna hide this about my metaphysical universal beliefs, I call it the universe too. Like it's the word switch, like the presence, that feeling still feels the same. I'm just calling it something different, but and I almost feel like my connection has enhanced the more I've embraced, right? So that connection that was always there just feels enhanced and magnified and more solidified. So mirror scrying, what is that?
So this is something that I do not suggest anybody starts with. You start with fire scrying and water scrying. But so scrying is basically, like it's like you put yourself in a trance and you're staring at something specific. Let's say, the candle, like I said in the beginning, I would put a little candle, up on my dresser or something. Or I would put a book on we had carpet, and I'd put a book down, so I wasn't putting it on the carpet because it would fall over and I didn't want to set my house on fire. So I put a book down and I put a candle, on top, and I would just kind of lay there and just watch it, like just stare, and my mind would just kind of go, like it just kind of floated away over time. Like it was just almost like I was just in this trance watching the flickering of the light. And when you're staring at that flickering of a light long enough, your peripheral vision goes out. Like you're suddenly not able to see anything at the sides. And then you start getting pictures in your head. And like, just kind of like, like when you dream, you have images, or if you're thinking back on a memory, I guess people who have the pictures in their mind, apparently not everybody does, which I had a hard time believing for a long time. But I would get pictures in my mind, and I would interpret them the way I would interpret my dreams my whole life. Mirror scrying is staring at your reflection. And you put a mirror, about this, just enough so that your eyes can soft focus while you're looking at your own reflection, typically in your eyes, and your reflection starts changing. There's actually some science around this, some experiments that they did where they said that if you suffer from depression, that you don't see the pictures change, that your face just stays the way that it is. If you don't suffer from depression, then you start seeing the picture morph into demonic and scary sort of, like images that show up. And this can, if you're a little more like sensitive, if you're like a person who gets scared easy, or somebody who's like more, prone to being like queasy and getting sick to your stomach over a situation, it can really get into your psyche and mess with you. And give you nightmares. And so I do believe that's why people are like, oh, mirror scrying opens, portals to the other side. I'm like, it probably does, because the stuff that you see, and the stuff that you see and the way that it affects your psyche, like it messes with you when you see yourself morph like that. Like I don't know how to describe it. I always tell people, I'm like, you don't start with mirror scrying. You start with fire scrying. And when you get comfortable with that and just seeing pictures in your head and being comfortable with yourself, I always say, you got to get to a point where you're comfortable being alone, and comfortable with your own thoughts, which is really hard to find teenagers that are okay with this anymore these days. But the more you can get comfortable with yourself, then you can start doing stuff like that. And now I just do it regularly. I even have a special my little thing fell off, but a little mirror, a little like specific black mirror that a friend of mine sent to me after I said out loud on a live about a vision that I had. And I was like, I guess I need a black mirror. And then my friend messaged me. He's like, I have one. And she's like, I've been waiting for the person who, for me to give it to. And she's like, you said very specifically what it was. She's like, I'll send it to you. I was like, thank you. I'm not going to say no. It's like, what are the chances that you were in my life at this time too?
Yeah, that's like absolute serendipity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just another way of bringing more images into your mind and kind of opening yourself up to receiving information, to channeling, downloading, whatever you want to call it.
What's the significance of a black mirror? Because I've read books where, the witches in the book use the black mirror. And I've always been curious what the significance of that is.
I think the idea behind it is that you're looking into a void. Except when you actually look at a black mirror, you realize it's not a void because it's so reflective. I feel like it's even more reflective than just a regular mirror sometimes. And so sometimes I have to put it at a certain angle where when I'm looking at it, I'm not seeing my reflection. I just put it so the reflection is at a wall or something. So it does look like a black void. But I think that's what it is. It's like you're looking into something you're technically not supposed to be able to look into. Just darkness and nothingness and grabbing information from the ether, basically, which is what you do anyways. I mean, I don't need it. I could, like the way that I scry now. I made a video on, I don't have my thing with me. Like I'll lay down, like if I'm doing a seer session, which is one of my the readings that I offer, I'll lay down and I'll put something over my eyes, like lightly, so I can still keep my eyes open, but my eyes are covered. So when my eyes are open, I'm just looking into darkness. And then as, I start kind of thinking about the person that I'm doing the reading on, then I start getting images. And I start getting, whether it's faces or just symbols, that I interpret. And then, I kind of have, I have a notebook that I put on my belly. And as I'm seeing them, I write it down. I just scroll it down in the notebook. So when I'm done, then I have this notebook with just random, words written on it. And I'll go and list it out and interpret them all. And then continue or give that person more of the interpretation of what it's trying to tell them.
I wonder too if the black mirror, my mind just goes all sorts of places. I wonder too if the black mirror is more of a conductor because of what it's made of. So versus glass, you've got, because black mirrors are traditionally made of obsidian. So I wonder if maybe it's a conductor. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, especially if you have something that is real obsidian, then I imagine it's going to have some sort of, I guess, action or response as any other crystal really does. I'm just realizing now, I have this little obsidian thing that somebody gifted me. It's a little stone, but just pure, a raw one. And I'm like, this would be kind of cool, but it's not reflective enough to turn into an actual mirror. But sitting here, I was like, that could have been actually a pretty cool one. Wait a second.
It's super polished.
I wonder if I could polish that.
Yeah. Get one of those National Geographic tumblers. I'm just tumbling my rock.
See, I want one of those someday.
Too.
But what was interesting about it was that I never really considered mirrors. I never stopped to think about, oh, I need a black mirror. That's not how it happened. I never, I'd always thought, oh, I need a new deck, oh, I need a new, a new medium or something. But I never stopped to think about a mirror. And I laid down one time. I don't remember if I was laying for a nap or just laying down for the sake of just kind of being horizontal. Sometimes I have to lay down. I have autoimmune illnesses and stuff, and I sometimes I just have to lay down so I don't drop to the floor. I'm tall. If I fall, I'm going to get a concussion. But I laid down and it wasn't even a full closing my eyes. I blinked hardly, and I saw a vision of what looked like a statue of a woman. It was this bluish, blackish kind of statue of a woman, and instead of a face, it was a black mirror. And it was just this instant of this super vivid image, and I kind of was whoa, what the heck was that? And I'm I think I need a black mirror. I don't know why, because I don't need one to do my work, but I think I need one, so it happened. I just talked about it online once, and somebody was like, I have one. I'll send it to you.
I love that you connect to the blue colors, because your runes, the blue, and then when you saw the mirror, it was connected to the blue black statue. That's really cool. I also love that you taught yourself Egyptian hieroglyphics. I was all about Egyptian history when I was younger, and I so much wanted to go to Egypt. I still do, because the hieroglyphs and everything just they called to me.
Oh, I was obsessed. I wanted, I had a plan. So as I said, I was raised in a cult. Now this cult, when you're female and you turn 18, by the time you turn 16, 17, you're already getting the, who are you going to marry? Who are you going to marry? And so at 18, you get married. And if you're not married and you're 20, then everybody, I don't know if you've ever seen The Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yes.
It's a lot like that, except a little more harsh. And so I was either, I'm going to turn 18, I'm going to go get married like every other girl at church, or I'm going to disappear and live month by month in a trailer in Egypt, because I'm going to be an Egyptologist. Those were my two options.
I like option 2.
For life. Yeah. And, it ended up happening that I got married at 18 and, went down that path for many years. But no, I remember I would go to libraries just of my own accord, as a teenager, me and my friend. She was addicted to Greek mythology, and I was all about, Egyptology. And I remember going on a trip with my family, and I had 7 books of hieroglyphs and ancient Egypt, just, history. And I'm sitting there, and there was older gentleman that was sitting next to me, and I was in 7th grade at this time. And I pull out my books and I piled them all on my little table in front of me on the airplane. And this guy's sitting there looking at me. I could tell he's staring at me, and I'm just I'm just reading my books, like, leave me alone. And then he asked me, he's like, is this for school? And I was like, no, I'm just reading, like, for fun. And he's like, you're just reading about Egyptian hieroglyphs. And I was like, yeah. He's like, how old are you? And I was like 12, at the time, 13, whatever. And he's like, just for fun. And I was like, yep. And then I found out he'd worked for NASA. And we were sitting there just talking about, like, what I was learning and why I was learning it. And he was going on into, he was at NASA for like 40 plus years or something like that. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting next to like a spaceman. That's all I knew about NASA was space at the time. But, but I thought that, like, I felt so special that somebody on that, like, high of a pedestal in my mind was, like, impressed with me. And I was like, I'm just doing what I like to do.
You're like, I feel a little seen, but this is normal.
Yeah.
This is regular life for me, routine.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pretty much.
How did we're speeding forward. You're not 14 anymore, hiding books. You're living vibrantly yourself. How does your family receive that now?
They don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't like it at all. I left the church when I left my first husband back in 2016, officially, like, physically, but mentally and emotionally, they knew that I was gone 2015. I was just trying to, find my way out. But I had all sorts of attacks, as soon as I left from members of the church, slashing of my tires, breaking into my house, trying to stalk me online. And I know how to use online. I've been taking computer classes in second grade on those old, the DOS, whatever, computers. So, I was able to find everybody's IP address and trace it to everybody. And, I was able to, figure stuff like that out. But, they were not happy. I still have a lot of the church members kind of going after my kids sometimes, trying to, convince them that I'm, doing something wrong. My dad, a couple visits ago, they visit like once a year or so. And he was sitting down and he's like, so what are you really doing in there? Like in my office. And, I just kind of gave the basic, concept. He understood that what I was doing was not, it was considered witchcraft from, their part of the world. And he's like, and you don't think you're going to open something up or you're going to bring something negative? And I was like, Dad, I've been doing this for longer than you know. And I know my mom, my grandparents on my mom's side were both gifted, and they were very revered prophets. And so when I found that out, I was like 21, 22, I got angry because I'm like, wait a second. So this skips a generation and it's not okay when I do it. But when Mami Kantatika would do it, it was fine. Like everybody was like, oh, wow. Okay. Like, no. And so my mom, I remember having this conversation one time and she's like, you have to be really careful with what you're bringing in. You have to, watch out with, how you're, I don't remember exactly how she said it, but essentially being like, my mom told me what it's like and you need to be careful so you don't go too far. And I'm like, Mom, I've been doing this since before I was a woman. like you don't know how long I've been doing. I have gone as deep as I can go. I'm like, there's nothing there that Mamika has experienced that I have not. And I'm like, I think I've just embraced it differently. But it is the same. From what I heard about them, before they died, I'm like, it's the same thing. But, they had this attachment of, we can't approach it this way. We can't look at it this way. We can't, it has to be from God or else, And it drove me crazy that it wasn't accepted when I was doing it. But it is when they do it. But no, they all know that I do it now. And nobody talks about it anymore, which is fine.
Nobody talks about Bruno. So
yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. You think it's because you utilize different focal tools to harness, like to direct your gifts, or were your grandparents using runes and cards and stuff like that?
I don't think they were using anything. When my parents first found out about all this, they didn't know that I was using anything either. Like when I first started, I wasn't using anything. I mean, I asked for help when I was 12, and that was a year before I got my first deck. And I was like, I'm just going to figure this out myself, like, because I asked for help, and then they announced in church what was going on, and I lost friends. I was no longer able to go to certain kids' houses. Like, I was, suddenly this pariah within my age group and more. And nobody ever looked at me the same. And so I could never feel like I was part of the community anymore from 12 years old. And, but they didn't use, as far as I know, they didn't use anything. It was dreams, it was visions, and just information like, what we would call downloads or channeling now. But they just, oh, God told me. Yeah, God tells me too, but I don't call him God.
Just in a different way. We all have different.
Yeah.
We all have different tools.
Well, still in the same way too, but now I also use tools. I started using tools mainly because I learned that people have a hard time taking information from my mouth if I don't have something else to apply the knowledge to. Okay. People don't want to hear information about the personal lives coming from another person. But if it comes from a rock, they'll believe it. If it comes from a card, they're going to believe it. If it comes from a pendulum hanging, they're going to believe it. But people, they want to see that extra, non-living thing tell them these things to have more of that feeling of, something spiritual, I think. Which I understand. And I mean, even I have experiences with them where I'm just like, holy shit. Like, wow. And I was just like, wow, that was awesome. Thank you. But a lot of time, the vast majority of my readings is coming from in here. It's the tools are usually things that I build up, and I have actual conversations with, the other side through them sometimes. So if I'm not a medium, I've never claimed to be a medium. As I like to tell people, I'm like, I could be a medium, but I don't want to necessarily, because I like to whole-ass things. I don't want to half-ass things. And if I was going to go be a medium, then I would be half-assing my work and half-assing mediumship. And at least for some years until, you get it down. And but there's been occasions where I found out somebody had passed without somebody telling me. But I would, have a sudden sense, or an image would come to my mind, or sudden knowing would come, and I would start pulling runes and ask questions out loud, like, what happened? And then I'd pull a rune, and it would be, like, I would get an answer from the rune. And so then I would know how this person died. I would know where their mind was at, why they did it, and how they're feeling now on the other side. And then I'd get the call of, hey, did you hear? I'm like, kind of.
A little bit. Not the way you think. Wow. Yeah, but you know what? I like, not that you need my validation, but I really love the way that you approach working with your different tools, for lack of a better word, and approaching your gift kit, because it sounds like completely, absolutely, like 2000% intuitive led. It is your intuition guiding you on how to receive the messages, whether the messages are for you or for someone else. And I like that a lot. I also love that you don't rely on something specific. So like, for example, for me, these whole online readings for the, genuine, authentic psychics or mystics. I love that I don't have to touch something of theirs to get that connection to that reading, because John knows this. That's been my number one hang up. If, I go somewhere and it's like, well, shuffle my cards. I'm like, I don't want to touch your cards. Yeah. Or, and it's not a me thing. It's just for me. I don't want to create that connection to their, something that they're energetically strongly connected to every day, right? So for me, it's like, no, thank you. I don't want to touch them. Like, if we can't do this without that, then I'm good. Maybe next time.
Yeah, I have certain ones that, because my kids will come in and be like my youngest, she'll come in and be like, can I play with the runes? And I have, a certain little baggie that I let her play with, so that nobody, not even necessarily because I'm not worried of energy exchange, that doesn't affect me or my work at all. And so, I could let her play with my runes, but these are I'm like, these are the ones the gods gave me. So I'm going to keep these here so we don't lose them or have any like any sort of like, issue here. But here, you could play with these ones or these ones or these ones. And I have certain decks that I'll let them use too. I keep pointing over here. I'm like, this is my work space with all my cards are laid out. Those are the main ones that I use. And, whenever I'm doing my stuff, but besides the runes. But I still have many more decks. I'm just like, these are the main ones that I use with the readings that are most often purchased for my shop.
I feel like I just got like a sneak peek behind the curtain of Oz. It's so magical.
And dusty.
And I am so like, I don't know, I probably don't have the highest vibrations when it comes to the metaphysical world, but I'm just like, because I don't always know people, right? So like if it's kids, like my kids, like absolutely touch my rocks, whatever. But if it's like, I don't know you, I don't know if you're up to something nefarious, maybe you are trying to have an energetic connection, maybe you are, and it's like, I'm so paranoid. So
see, and it's funny because I've always been the opposite, where I'm just like, I never believed anybody's like intentions could affect me, because my walls of protection was always so like, I just like,
I want to learn that.
I don't know, like, I'm like, I don't want it to come across as like this like egotistical thing. I'm like, because it's just this like sense of, if I'm not going to allow somebody to mentally or emotionally mess me up, then I'm not going to let them mess me up spiritually either, like energetically. Like, it's just, I'm not going to allow it, so it's not going to happen. And yet, there was this one time, which I think it was just the universe being like, all right, let's kick this in the butt a little bit, like off your high horse here. I was working for Random.com. It's like a psychic campsite where it's basically what I do on TikTok, but there's all these rules and a lot of harassment. So when I was able to leave that, I was happy. I was like, oh my God. But I was working for them, and I had this like week of just like weird things happening that were just awful, and I'm a freaking ray of sunshine. Like, I could be walking through hell and I am still like seeing the positive outlook. I'm still like, things are gonna be okay. And I mean, I'm over there. I was the one like on my deathbed in 2011 with meningitis, and I was still sitting there trying to crack jokes and be like, it's okay. Is that Jesus on the wall? Like, which I saw something, but I was, it's just how I've always been. And so this week, this one week, as I was working at Orlando, I just had all this bizarre stuff happening. And I told my husband, I was like, man, it's like, if I believed in curses, I would think somebody put like a curse on me or something. I'm like, because this has been such a bizarre week. And then I kid you not 24 hours later, I'm on a random and I'm talking to the people that are in the chat. And there's one person, the way Aranum works is like when somebody wants a reading, they have to click on this thing where it starts paying like by the minute, and it takes you into a separate room with that person so you can do the reading on them, and there's no public chat around. And so I get pulled into this, chat with this person, and she's like, something happened. She's like, I really need to talk to you about this. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, beforehand, let me just tell you, I'm so sorry. This is not what I intended to happen. And I'm just like, okay. Oh no, actually this wasn't in private because everybody read. I remember everybody like being like, whoa, wait, what the heck? So she came and she's like, I'm really sorry. It was one of my regulars. And she's like, so you're my psychic and I have this one other. She's like, you two are the ones that I always go to for everything. And she's like, there's this third person that I went to this one time. And when she asked if I work with other, psychics, I told her about, you and this other person. And she's like, and I just found out that this third one went and she did like a spell against me and the other person. Literally on that same week that I was having all these things. And I was like, no way. And I'm like smiling, like, really? And she's like, wait, she's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, hold on. I was like, let me tell you what happened this week. And I went and listed it. And people in the chat are like, why are you smiling? Why, like, are you okay with it? I'm like, this is cool. Like, I never thought this would ever affect me. I'm like, it wasn't even like life, altering horrible things. It was just like bizarre, inconveniencing things, really, and I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's not like, I'm like in a hospital or sick or, it's not like one of my kids has cancer or something, it's like, it's fine. Okay, cool. Now I know somebody's intentions can work against me, or I can actually feel them. And I'm like, you proved me wrong. And I'm like, awesome, thank you. Like, it's like, thank you, universe. That was a cool experience. Now let's never have it happen again.
I love your perspective, though. You're just like, that's so cool. Don't do it again, but wow.
Well, sometimes it's like the universe is like, okay, like there's a lesson to be learned here, and you're gonna learn it. And you know, I'm no stranger to discomfort. I think I've been in a position where I have felt utter terror to the point where I was like, I went into shock because of terror. Like, and I mean, I can't describe or say, use a bigger, better word than terror. To where it freezes you and you're like, what is going to happen? Am I going to make this? Am I going to get out of this? Is this like the end of everything? Are my kids going to be okay? Like, how is this going to pan out? And it was like, ever since that happened, I'm like, nothing else is that bad. Like, it's fine. Like, I can, I could lose everything now. And I'm like, it would be fine. If I had to go live, in a tent with my husband because something went awful, like, we would figure it out. And I'm like, nothing is ever going to be as bad as that moment of being in absolute sheer terror of what is going to happen. And it wasn't even necessarily terror about my own life. It was, how is this going to hurt the world, my kids around me? How is it, if their mom is not around, how are they going to grow up in this cult and not have a way out, or not have somebody to tell them that there is something beyond just the extremist Pentecostal perspective that they were being force-fed from birth. I'm like, that's one thing I told my husband when we first got together. I'm like, if there is ever a situation where it was like, I have to be there for my kids to make sure that they're going to understand that they're not going to be stuck and trapped in that situation, I will go and handle that situation regardless of what we have going on. Like, this is my purpose at this point. Like, I will not die until my kids are at a point where they will at least remember the lectures they get from mom about critical thinking and understanding that there are other ways, that you are not going to be forced in this religion just because somebody bigger than you who has this perceived, idea of authority forces it on you. It's like you turn 18, you get to be the driver's seat, you're in the driver's seat of your life. You don't have to be forced into living a life that you don't want to live. And my kids are now, beyond that age. So at this point, every year I get is bonus. And, but, it's just that's always kind of been my mentality. I'm like, ever since, you feel that sense of sheer terror and nothing seems as bad.
You are like the ultimate badass mom. I love it.
Thank you.
But it's real, right? Like that mom, that maternal instinct, for those that truly feel it and connect to it, like nothing else can interfere with that. That's like the golden light that's just like cannot be messed with. And I feel that so much. Like you were talking about that, and I'm like, yes, I get every single word. Yes.
And it's crazy how it manifests in different ways, like mentally and emotionally, and the things that you can do, to protect your kids, like physically when you're in a situation. One of the funniest experiences I had with that, it was my first understanding of that maternal instinct when it comes to physical situations, was when my first, she's 16 now, but when she was a baby, and I was walking to my car, I was visiting my cousin, and I was walking to my car and I was holding her, and my ankle twisted as I stepped down onto this thing, and she was a baby, like baby. And so I fell forward, but I somehow still managed to like whoosh, turn myself over, so she landed like softly on my chest while I knocked myself like pretty bad. And I was sitting there like,
she's good, we're good.
She's good.
Now I need to go to the
and I'm
hospital.
like, I was sore for like a week. But I was like, I am not a balanced person. I'm not a person who, was ever good at like sports or anything. I can't do any sort of cardio stuff. Like I'm not that person. And, the fact that I was able to so quickly shift my body around when I was going head first, and I, would have dropped her if had I I don't want to think if it was somebody else's kid. I'm like, I want to think that maternal instinct is there, whether you're holding your baby or another baby. But it was terrifying.
That reminds me of when my daughter was a baby. Her mom was watching her while I was at work, and I got a phone call from her mom saying, I slipped down the stairs outside. There was ice all over. I think I sprained my ankle, but the baby's fine. And I'm like, okay, cool. I guess I got to leave work to go, check all this out. And I didn't have a car, of course. So I took the light rail, train, whatever, and the bus home. And sure enough, outside the apartment, the stairs were super icy. I slipped going up, and I don't know how she did it, but like you said, you just kind of twisted your body and kind of landed, and that's, I guess, how she did it too, because there wasn't a scratch on my child or nothing, just a broken ankle on mama. But yeah, it was just crazy.
And there's something to be said about dads too, the dad reflexes.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I could watch those videos all day, and my stomach is in my throat like the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just like, holy crap, the reflexes that the dads have is insane.
Yes.
So I thought we were thinking of the same thing. That was totally something different. Because you said you would hope you do it for, somebody else's baby. But we just had a guest recently who she said she was holding someone's baby and a wasp flew up. And instead of shield the baby, she pushed the baby forward. She's like hoping the wasp stings the baby and not her. And I was like, remind me to never let you hold any of my kids. I was like, so the instinct is not with you? That's okay.
Right.
Oh, man.
That was literally, a week ago?
She's like, I yeeted the baby at a wasp. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, no. Yeah. That was great.
So, not everyone has the instinct. That's all right.
That's right.
So, what does being a Romanian-American mystic mean to you?
Well, I think I really started embracing the Romanian aspect of things when I really started paying attention to American politics. And I'm like, holy hell, I do not have the mentality of an American. And it's not even to do with my religion or with my, religious past as much as it has to do, I think, just with the culture that I was raised in. Again, I was not raised in a home that was traumatic or abusive. It was after I left as an adult that things got out of hand. And I really realized how mistreated women are and misguided girls are and how groomed we are, from 12 years old and up or so, when they start grooming you to just be a wife and a mother. You're a baby factory. That's all you are. And, no identity, no sense of purpose besides having a baby and serving your husband. And, that was hard, but I was raised in a very different culture. And, because of that culture, even through school, I went to ESL, English second language, in my first few years of school. I was raised in Arizona, and, my school, it was me, a girl, a Vietnamese girl, a lot of kids from Mexico, and then a lot of Native Americans from the surrounding reservations. And so I was surrounded by different cultures, and we were able to, understand each other, even though we didn't speak English with each other, We all spoke our own languages, and but we still managed. We still, came together. We were the best friends, for the first few years of school. And we understood each other's cultures, and we respected each other's cultures, and we loved to share these things with each other. And as I grew up and I started seeing this, American mentality, the American patriotism and all that, I'm just this is too heavy for me. But I would see the real ugly side of it, and that really just messed me up, I think, when it came to my deconstruction and everything. Because where I come from, the cult is both extremely religious, but extremely, it's the extreme Republican, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, it's insane how much control they want over everybody's life, and how much, they have that mentality of if you're not white, if you're not straight, then, I have literally heard pastors talk about putting everybody on an island and burning them, setting them alight and I'm like, how can you be, of God and talk like this and claim that that's American patriotism? Like, that's the kind of, politics and whatnot that, I had around me. And so that's where I really started looking, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually a little more in tune with the cultural side of me. And I mean, and also as, I was looking at different types of divination and learning about history and stuff, I was looking at different cultures as well. I delved into, Hindu, and I delved into old, Celtic paganism. And, I had a friend in high school who was Muslim, so I got to see, the different approaches to religion and to spirituality from all these different cultures. And that's where I was really like, wow, I think I'm more Romanian and more in culture, than I am of anything else. I mean, I grew up with the language, the food, the community. As far as I knew, I was in Romania until I started school and everybody's speaking English and stuff, But that's kind of where that whole Romanian aspect came from. And then I started learning about how much actually witchcraft is still practiced in Romania. Romanian witches they're pretty freaking hardcore out there. And though I don't claim to be, of any specific path, I'm a pagan omnist. I believe that all paths of spirituality have some truth to them. There's not one single path. They're all different pathways that go to that same ball of energy at the end, to the same, it's all connected to the same tree, the tree of life. And that every path is still going to take you to the same end, regardless of what background you're coming from. If you're walking into spirituality, if you're trying to walk spiritually, or metaphysically or mystically, whatever you want to call it, if you are trying to better yourself and connect to something bigger than you, we're all going to end up in the same place. It's religion, and all these laws and rules that we set in place to control things, to keep everybody doing the same thing. That is not spirituality. That's not mysticism. That's the opposite of it. But I think once you're walking any of these other paths, we're all going to end up in the same place, because we're all trying to find that sense of connection. But that's what it is to me, is just that connection to something bigger and to others who I immediately connect with as well. I mean, I can go walk into a crowd and point to the people that I feel some sort of connection, oh, this person's a mystic. Oh, that person is religious. Oh, this person is, on this level of spiritualism. I could feel these things about people. And I'm like, that has been my life, has been feeling, people's energy, feeling the path that they're on, feeling the outcomes that they're, about to see. And I had enough experiences to prove it with people. So that's just kind of been my whole life.
I'll go next. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
I'm like...
No, so the really cool thing is I'm part of your Facebook group, and I know you offer different, specials in the group. And so I know I signed up for one, and you sent me a reading, and I was just like, oh, every single word resonates. I feel so seen and exposed and vulnerable. I hate it and love it all at the same time. It was so, I know I messaged you and I'm like, this is so spot on. It's scary.
If it makes you feel any better, I have this release that I do where I don't remember anybody's readings. I'll do the reading and I let it go. And so I'll have people, and people who've been coming for years getting readings. And I'm like, and I know every in and out of their story, and still they'll ask questions. I'm like, hold on. And I have to pull it up again and read through and be like, where were we? And I do think that it also has to do with when I was going through that traumatic situation. I went into shock. I disassociated. And that's my default when I get to a certain stress level. I just whoosh, and I'm not there anymore, And I recognize what part of my brain, that happens in. And I've kind of learned, I remember it happened during, there was a movie, a war movie. And there was some scene in there of a baby that was, a victim of the war. And I was I had just, had a baby at that time too. And I was I can't hold that image in my head. I can't do that. And I was I focused on that part of my brain. I'm and it's gone. And now I don't remember what it, I could make myself remove these images from my mind. And so I I don't like the idea of carrying people's stories, you know, within myself after I do readings for them. And I live very much like a very grounded, like present life. Like, you know, you'd think, you know, somebody who's doing readings all the time is always floaty and out in the ether, you know, but I'm like, I bring myself down to feel every experience that I have while, you know, I'm here, and to be here for my kids, and to be here for my husband, and to, you know, kind of delve inside and do my shadow work when I need to do mine. And you can't do all that when you're carrying everybody's stories and negativities and stresses. And so I train to just kind of pull it off. And I don't do readings for anybody unless they ask. Like, I won't do it without permission, without consent.
That's so balanced. Finding that balance is so key. And I also think, just from a perspective of, because you are so intuition led, if you did hold on to people's stories, that might influence or color a future reading with that like previous knowledge. So truly being able to blank slate that and just give them what they need in that moment. Like, to me, that sounds ideal. But what do I know? I don't do readings.
You can.
But don't start with the mirror.
No.
I don't think I would ever be able to do the mirror, to be honest.
No, that's why I have mine
You're like,
covered
you know,
up.
those people that are afraid. I'm like, me.
Yeah.
That won't work out well. So I'll do the fire.
I have
The fire, definitely.
Oh no, it's never. I didn't actually put it on my cover. My book series that I wrote, the mess, or the little phrase that, you know, happens throughout the book is "cover your mirrors." It's a portal fantasy, and so mirrors are used for scrying and used for, you know, travel as well in the books. But I think it's funny you said your mirror's covered. I'm like,
Yep, that's exactly why I choose the
wrote
whole
that,
portal
too.
thing. So, yep.
Anytime we do episodes where we talk about like paranormal games
Oh my
or
goodness,
like
yes.
anything having to do with like demonology, I'm just like, and we're covering the mirror behind, you know, my computer, just in case. Because I very much think words carry energy, and I don't want to accidentally be like, I summoned 4 demons tonight. Yay!
Right? Get
Look
ready
at
to
me
play some
go.
games. Here we go. It's race time, Ashley. No.
Now, you write under a different name, right?
yeah, LF Oak.
LF Oak. And what is the name of your series?
The Chronicles of J-Dur. It's a world that I created as my own little... I created it with my best friend, Emily, and we created it together. A lot of it was done out of my own need to escape my loneliness. I can't tell you... I was just talking to my teenager about this yesterday. How much time in my teenage years when, you know, like, I didn't get bored. I don't know what boredom feels like. That never existed for me. If I wasn't doing some sort of divination, that I was communicating with something, or I was daydreaming. And my daydreaming was creating this world that I turned into my series. And then me and my friend, we, you know, drew out this really shoddy map, and which I later hired a cartographer, a really aggressive, almost scary one. She was awesome. And she made this awesome, I have my map back there, but this like map of the world. And, but I would lay there in bed for hours on end. Like, if I ever was bored and I didn't have anything to do, I was like, okay, I'm going to go lay down. And I would just stare up at my ceiling. And, cause I can't just lay there with my eyes closed. They flutter open. And so I'm always doing things with my eyes open. That's even when I do my, you know, scrying and stuff. And, so I'd lay there, and I built this, like, it was like this like chamber where it was like my own personal escape, where it was like, and I actually described this place in my series. Like, I made it like this big, you know, important, you know, thing. Because the whole series, the whole book is a lot of my own experiences, but in an exaggerated fantasy, you know, like the presentation. And so it's like traditional fantasy, old Celtic stuff, dragons, fairies, trolls, you know, that kind of thing. But it's a portal fantasy, so it bounces between our world and a fantasy world, and where, you know, the main character is a seer, and she's essentially called to be one of the 4 elemental goddesses of, you know, J-Dur, where she also has access to, you know, this hall of mirrors, which is that chamber, you know, that I created in my daydream. And she is essentially, just kind of bringing balance to the world and being that mediator between people. Now, back then, I didn't know, obviously, what I would be doing as, like for my career. And so now I'm like, oh, I think subconsciously, so, spiritually on some level, I knew what direction I was going. Because I go into things like astral projection, remote viewing, having visions, interpreting these things, connecting to nature, connecting to something bigger. Like, I go into all of that, and that was all before I even knew any of that, was really real on any level, before I knew about metaphysics.
Are you able to do astral projection or remote viewing and things of that nature?
Remote viewing, I do pretty often. I try to not do it as often. I actually have one kid who, like, I'll be like at work or something, and I'll get like Mom, I can't find this thing. Like, where is it? I'll be like, it's next to something green in a laundry basket. If you're like, what? Why would it be there? And they'd be like, I found it. It was like, what was the green thing? Oh, it was a flashlight or something, And I used to have people coming into my my lives on a random. I had this one lady come in. She's like, can you help me find something? And I'm like, what is it? And she's like, it's my little pen for my tablet, for my art tablet. And I was like, it's in a corner somewhere where you have grout, because it's gray and it's matching your grout. You're just not seeing it. She's like, holy crap. She's like, that's where it was. And I'm like, I just got a picture in my head, Astral projection, though, I will not do. And that is, I get sleep paralysis. I haven't had it for a while, but you have to induce sleep paralysis to astral project. Oh. And I won't do that. I grew up with my experiences, I was already seeing enough things without going astral. So I'm like, I don't need to purposefully see anything. I called them demons when I was younger. Again, I had no concept of entities, of spiritual things on any level, of vibrational, frequencies or anything. And so I had, assumed they were demons. But I would see these entities, these things, and I would see them at school, I would see them at home, I would see them at church, and I proved it one time on my 16th birthday, my sweet 16, where a bunch of girls kind of invited themselves over for my party. Like, they weren't really my friends, at least they never really acted like my friends, unless, a situation like this came up. They're like, oh, it's your birthday, or you can do a sleepover, and I'm like, yeah, let's, And so I actually told the story on a TikTok somewhere. And it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and that's where we're all sitting on on my bedroom floor in a circle, and they're asking all the scary questions about the things that I see, because rumors in church and stuff. And at one point, something entered the room, and I'm like, now there's something, and they're like, well, what? Like, prove it. And I told them where it was in the room, and after they said prove it, I was just kind of like, how am I going to prove something if you can't see it, But then it was like, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear, but it was like a scratch of nails down the wall, right in that exact corner. And they all got up and screamed and freaked out. And I was like, thank you. I didn't know how I was going to prove that.
And that's when you were solidified as demon girl in the church.
Yes, probably. That was another one of those situations. Yes. But yeah, I'm like, did I even answer your question? What was the question?
So I want to say that I am really thrown off by the similarities. I feel like you and I are the same person, except I'm not nearly as cool as you. But growing up,
come on.
Growing up, I actually I've had to find the balance between, I call it living in my head and being present in the moment, because I would just create full scenes and worlds and everything, and I would just lay there and let it all play out, and then try and remember to write down exactly what what I envisioned. But I also had meningitis when I was 12, and that was a fun adventure. And sleep paralysis has been my thing since I was probably too young. I can't remember when it started. I know I was pretty young, but the things that you see and hear during that are absolutely alarming. So when you said you have to induce that for astral projection, I'm like, so I'm never going to astral project, because I would never willingly enter sleep paralysis.
Yeah, now I remember what the question was originally. Because yes, I won't do sleep. I won't do the astral projection on purpose. I have had experiences with the sleep paralysis. This one in particular that I will never forget, when I was, I think, 14 or 15, and I got caught in sleep paralysis. And so I was enough in the sleep paralysis that I was able to kind of pull out of my body and kind of see what was going on. I'm like, no, like get back in, get like trying to cram myself back in. And there was this because there was this entity. I don't like it didn't have the same shape as the things that I would see in my waking, like my waking time, like when I was fully awake and seeing things. It looked like it had like a weird square kind of shape to it, but it was just pitch black. And it was just this like kind of like, I don't know, like this like fizzing energy of something there at my door. And I was like, no. Like it came with this dark feeling. Because I wasn't afraid of everything that I saw. I could feel if something was vibrating extremely low to be darker, or if it was a high vibrational thing, which I had experiences with, the higher vibrational things that people would call angels too, just not as often as the low ones. And this one that was there was extremely low. And I was like, already at that point, I had so many experiences that I was like, no, like, this is my bedroom. Like, this is my life. Like, get out of my room. And so I got myself back in my body, but I was only like halfway. I was like in and out. And I was out, or I guess in enough that I was able to army crawl, kind of. Like, my head was so heavy, I could hardly lift my head. But I know I was crawling across my room to try to wave my hand at it to be like, out, like, get out, like, to prove to myself that it wasn't actually there. And I was able to get myself back to my bed, but I just sat there and cried because I couldn't get out. I couldn't get fully back in my body. I was still in that, like, it was a partial sleep paralysis, partially out. Like, it was just this weird, like, which I describe in my third book in my series, by the way. But with situations like that, like, I've had situations where I would go into sleep paralysis and I would actually get up and not realize it until I kind of turn around, there's this face right there, like, oh my God, like, no. And because these things, they're like, they're not all bad. The way I like to explain it is like, imagine, you're in a room with a crowd and there's a weird bug on the wall. And then one notices like, well, that's a weird bug. And then all the other ones are like, oh yeah, that is a weird bug. And so they all just, you're all coming to this bug and try to get closer, be like, what is that? Like, that's not, it doesn't, that looks like an alien. And it's like, that is what you draw in when you're astrally projecting.
You're the bug.
That's where those entities come in. You're the bug. And you have to get, like, it's right in that in-between space when you come out of your body. You have to get past that level, like that veil, to be able to function without these things just coming and freaking you out. Because they don't feel good, because it's not, we're on the, the third dimension here. We are on a plane where we all vibrate at, like on the spectrum. And when you're on the other side, they're at a very low, they're much lower than what we're used to. And so you feel it as something that is like fear, or, some people, if they're dark enough or vibrating low enough, it's like terror. And that's where the concept of demons come from. This thing that you don't understand, it's vibrating so low, like it's demonic. I mean, that's the word for it. But
I almost wonder if we feel demonic to higher elevation, elevated beings.
I imagine
we slip over and they're like, demon, get rid of it.
And maybe that's what happens when you walk in a room and you forget why you're there. You're like, wait a second, I was going to do something. Maybe you accidentally stepped through something.
Right.
Like, they're waving their sage at you.
They're like, put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
Right. Love the Monsters Inc. reference.
Of course.
So what is a deity connection?
So this one's kind of fun because there's so many moving pieces. Each deity is represented by, or represents an archetype. So you have a caretaker, you have a father, you have a mother archetype, you have a sage, adventurous one, the mischievous one. Every culture has these gods that represent these archetypes as well. And typically, when we feel like there's an aspect of ourselves that we feel more attached to, that is the archetype that we're naturally going to kind of lean to. So most people who, they connect well with Loki are, Geminis. People who are kind of, they're a little more mischievous. They're a little more like, two-sided, over certain, whether it's like, emotionally, mentally, whatever, that they have a certain energy around them that is like, you have a Loki energy, is like how I always say to people. I'm like, the Loki's written all over you. But then there's other, people who they're more drawn to learning and wanting to be, wanting to gain wisdom, wanting to feel like they're connected to something bigger, and they're hyper focused on the wisdom, on educating themselves and being that willing learner. People like that are oftentimes the ones you'll see, connect well with Odin. Or, I've had somebody, with straight up, it was like a very like compassion caretaker, but still spiritual kind of feeling that like was a very sort of like Jesus type of energy. But this person was not a Christian, but so then I start looking at other, cultures that have something that kind of encompasses that same energy. Oftentimes, most times, 99% of the time, when I know I'm doing a deity connection, I'll have a dream the night before, or I'll have an experience before I actually do the reading where it's like, oh, and this is coming through. Wow, okay. I guess that's the deity we're connecting to today. And still, I'll do the layout, and still, I'll pull all the tools out and be like, and this is why. And I will explain to this person, this is the energy that you're going, that you are matching with. This is why you're matching with this. And that's usually where like, there's like a general reading that comes in with what's going on in their energy right now. Like, why is your soul feeling like you need to connect to something? And why is it going to connect so well to this energy? I've had situations where it was a very blatant message that comes through where it was like, I think it was Thor one time, a Thor connection, which I've only done actually once, surprisingly. There's a lot of people who are like, I bet it's going to be Thor. And I'm like, it's not Thor. But then it makes sense to them, why this other connection is there. But it's basically helping people match their energy to a deity when they feel like they need to connect to something, when they feel like I need something that's going to make sense. I need something like, I have crazy things happening in my life. Where is this coming from? I've had those kind of situations, those questions where it's like something or someone is reaching out to me. Can you help me figure out who it is? And then I'll do a reading and, it comes out with a specific deity. And then every single time it's like, holy crap, because this just happened with that specific one. It's like, what are the chances? Like, that's not even a well-known one or something, But it's really mainly just to help people connect their energy to something bigger on that other side, to help them kind of and take a further step into spirituality if they feel that deity work is the way to do it.
That's really cool. Now, I understand where runes comes from. What about ravens? Because your runes are ravens.
This is actually
so.
I mean, I've always had a thing for, for ravens. I mean, through all the, Disney movies and, like Maleficent. Oh my God, I was all Maleficent. And anytime there was something to do with, with black birds, I was like all over it. Black anything at this point, because I was seeing demons, right? But really the name Runes and Ravens just kind of happened on a whim. Which is the same way that it happened with my writing name, LF Oak. It was Lillian Oak at first before I went to LF. And but with Runes and Ravens, it was just like I was running a similar kind of social media presence called Collective Truths at the time. And I needed to like rebrand. I was like, let me just do something different, something that's a little more specific. And I'm like, I want something that's going to be more pagan focused. Collective Truths just seemed a little too like, I don't know, sciencey, I guess. And, my whole purpose with Runes and Ravens is to help people connect the science to spirituality and to help people from every perspective, every level of skepticism and spirituality to have some semblance of an understanding of spirituality on some level, and to be able to recognize that, spirituality isn't, even psychicness isn't this magic thing. There's science behind it. There are, experiments that have been done about it. There's, any psychic you'll ever meet has had some sort of traumatic upbringing or their mother while the psychic was in utero, was going through severe levels of stress, and all of that, all the stress chemicals going through the baby. That's, in my case, that's what it was. Because I wasn't raised in a house where I was, severely abused or anything. I didn't have crazy childhood trauma, but when my mom was pregnant with me, they were escaping Romania. And, crawling on your hands and knees where you'd be shot on sight in a field overnight with a 4-year-old crawling behind you. Like, can you imagine the stress levels escaping Romanian communism at the time? So, and so the extreme levels of stress there, because she got to America and I was born the next day. And me carrying all that just kind of, it sparks those parts of the brain where you're just more aware of body language, you're aware of very subtle shifts in somebody's expression, and even more subtle things that you can't necessarily see. It's like walking into a room when it's super cold. You can't see it, but your body responds. You feel, you get goosebumps. You feel something different, and you can pinpoint it to, oh, it's the temperature. Well, when you have gone through, a lifestyle or an upbringing or something where you are in that mindset of protecting yourself, and you have to always be aware of what you're saying or how, somebody else is standing or behaving or speaking so that you can protect yourself, then it starts turning on these parts of the brain that are just hyper aware, and you're just able to pick these things up. It's more of that than it is, spirits whispering on the other side. Sometimes it is spirits whispering on the other side, but generally when you're talking to a true, authentic, psychic or mystic or whatever, they have come from some sort of upbringing where they really had to be, walking on eggshells or hyper aware, or their mother while pregnant with them was going through something insanely stressful.
That hyper awareness kind of thins the veil and forces it open.
Yeah.
Wow. That's neat. I mean, not the trauma, but just like how all of these situations come about, and how we're able to turn those really extremely negative situations into something that maybe could be beneficial or positive, depending how you look at it.
Yeah, I try to, I talk a lot about trauma, and I get attacked a lot because of that kind of angle. Sometimes comes across in a negative way where people are like, are you trying to tell me that it was good that I was traumatized? Like, no, but you were traumatized. There's nothing to steal. There's no way to make that go away. It's there. It happened. It's part of your DNA now. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to turn it into a tool, or are you going to leave it as something that you're constantly looking back at and carrying as this weight or this, suffering, this source of suffering all the time? We're dealt cards in life, and we have to work with what we have. It doesn't mean, that, oh, no, of course nobody deserves to be traumatized. Of course, it's not a positive thing for anybody to be traumatized, but if you are traumatized, you work with what you have, because what else are you going to do besides live a miserable life?
It's empowerment. It's saying, yes, that happened. Mm-hmm. We can't change that. Anybody that's gone through trauma, it happened, but now let's take the power back. Now let's harness it within ourselves and make it a strength, because we couldn't choose that moment. Let's now turn it into a strength. So I totally love that messaging. Absolutely.
Exactly. But Runes and Ravens was just kind of like a set in, well, that sounds nice together. All right, let's do it. And it took off, which is kind of like with Lily and Oak. I was sitting in a car and I was like, well, because I was first publishing books under my real name, and I had a situation with a stalker. And at that time, I was married to my first husband, who was not okay with me writing in the first place. And so I was just kind of like, okay, well, I don't need to bring more drama to my household. Let me just use a pen name. And I was sitting there in the car, and I looked out the window, and I was like, well, what kind of name am I going to use? And I saw an oak tree. I'm like, I like Lillian. Lillian Oak. I'll just add an E. And that's how I came up with that. It wasn't any, deep thought or anything. But, and same with Runes and Ravens. It's just like, well, it sounds nice. It rolls off the tongue.
I think it's great. And you have a moon on the website. So speaking of your website, if people want to work with you or find out more information about what you're able to do, or just connect with you, where can they find you?
TikTok is the main place. that's the number one place where I'm going to be found. But I think reaching me through either like if there's more questions about the readings or something, either through my website runesrobertson.com or through my Instagram or my Facebook page. I really don't look at my TikTok messages. It's just there's too many things that are sent to me, like people sending videos and sharing stuff, and I'm like, I can't keep up with all that, and I'll lose stuff in those messages. But in these other places, I try to kind of stay on top of things. But and then of course I have the private group, Runes and Ravens Private, which is where I invite people to have conversation and share their experiences and allow others to chime in and offer their own experiences as well, and let people see that they're not alone in their paranormal, spiritual, deconstruction, wherever it is you're coming from any level of spirituality. It's like let's have a conversation. That's what I've always kind of tried or strived to do, is create a space where people from any part of the world, any religion, any culture can come out and be like, this is my experience. Has anybody had something similar? Or, hey, this is my experience. What can this possibly mean? And see what people from other cultures or other backgrounds might have to say too, because it turns on, the conversation turns on all these parts of the brain that helps you connect to even more things. And I think the more we can connect to each other and the world around us, the happier we're going to be ultimately.
Yeah, from what I've experienced, you do create a really amazing space of people, and you hold that space for people to talk about whatever's going on with them. I mean, I've been that lingerer on your TikTok that just like watches the comments, and you really do talk to the people that you can read the comments. I know sometimes you get such a full room, it's kind of hard to catch every comment, but you really do engage with as many as you can, and your Facebook group is awesome. So anybody listening, I would highly recommend, checking out her TikToks. And even if it's just watching, like, I don't even know, I lurked probably a few times before I was brave enough to be like, okay, can I get a room poll, please? So Diana is awesome. And you play really awesome music, so.
Oh, thanks. I know I need to get back to the Viking music that I started with, because I've been going to like Enya lately, which is mainly because I had this experience recently that kind of like retuned me back into this part of my brain I was using when I was 14. And I was like, oh, hold up. Like, this is like a major like deja vu. And it's like triggered even more by the certain Enya album that I listened to, because that's what I listened to at that time when I was going through some of my darkest, times as a teenager. And with, these like experiences that I was having. And so I've been playing that more, but I'm like, I know that people really like the Viking stuff too. So
I love that you're leaning into that though. Like, you know what? This is helping kind of develop that. It's all connected. So why not? And, they could use a little shakeup of music. So.
Oh yeah, you got to make it a little different.
I really appreciate you coming on today. This has been a really fun conversation.
It has been. Thank you so much. I'm like looking at the time. I'm like, how in the world?
I know. I watch it creep by and I'm like, oh my gosh. I know. I told you an hour. But yeah.
Yeah, this was fun. I loved it.
Like I said at the beginning, it happens.
It happens. It just, the conversations, like, it's really, we've said it before, these topics are so big and so deep that we really just scratch the surface. With our guests about these things. We try to get to what we can, and whatever comes out, because that's what was supposed to, right? But it definitely, to capture all of these huge topics in 1 hour, it's we have big goals.
Yeah. Well, I had fun. I loved it. I can talk about these things all the time.
Heck yeah.
All right, Jonathan, you want to bring us home?
I will bring us home. We're home. Hooray. I'm just joking.
Smart ass.
I had to, just to see the eye roll. All right. Thank you again, Diana, for coming on. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank
and I
you.
look forward to having you on again very soon, or as soon as we can. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, like we always ask, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one amazing moment.
Until next time. What's up, ghouls, gals, and metapals? Thanks for tuning in to Season 3 of 3Haunted Podcast. Head on over to our website, 3hauntedpodcast.com, for more information on our merch, episode guests, and any upcoming events. We'll see you in Season 4. And until then, spooky later, pals.